your roadmap to the latest in auto. Welcome to Highway Herald. We're shifting into a high-stakes trade showdown shaking the very chassis of North American industry. President Trump recently doubled U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, blindsiding allies like Canada. Markets jolted, automakers scrambled, and supply chains hit turbulence. But Canada didn't just swerve, it struck back with high-torque precision. Adaptive tariffs, reshoring incentives, procurement mandates, and traceability systems. With July 21st set as the make-or-break deadline, this isn't just policy, it's a full-throttle test of industrial resilience. The spark that lit the trade engine. In June 2025, President Trump invoked Section 232, citing national security to justify doubling tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%. The shock move didn't just target rivals like China, it hit close allies, including Canada and Mexico, disrupting the spirit of USMCA. Financial markets reacted swiftly, futures contracts hit limits, the US dollar surged, and automakers from Detroit to Windsor paused orders to reassess supply chains. Canada, however, was already on the defensive. Having imposed a 25% retaliatory tariff back in March on over 15 billion Canadian dollar worth of US metals, Prime Minister Mark Carney responded to the June escalation with a firmer stance. At the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Carney and Trump agreed to a 30-day negotiation window, with July 21st set as the deadline. If talks fail, Canada promises to escalate its retaliation. This isn't just a typical trade spat. It's a full-throttle challenge to economic sovereignty and North American supply chain resilience, marking a pivotal moment in regional and global trade dynamics. But Canada's initial stance was just the first gear. What followed next was a precision-tuned retaliation effort that redefined policy playbooks. Precision retaliation, Canada's strategic rollout. Canada's response is far from a knee-jerk reaction. It's strategic, calibrated, and built for long-haul impact. On June 19th, Prime Minister Mark Carney rolled out a dynamic tariff model set to activate July 21st. Rather than applying static penalties, this system adjusts tariff levels based on real-time progress in US-Canada trade negotiations. Think of it as adaptive cruise control for trade retaliation, responding swiftly as talks shift gears. In parallel, procurement policy is getting a complete tune-up. Beginning June 30th, all federally funded Canadian infrastructure, defense, and automotive projects must prioritize domestic sourcing. U.S. firms aren't entirely excluded, but to qualify, they must manufacture within Canada's borders. It's a strong incentive to relocate production closer to home. Canada is also tightening the screws on steel imports. Tariff rate quotas will be set at 100% for non-free trade nations based on 2024 volumes, with chemical traceability to block circumvention. It's a supply chain lockdown with surgical precision. Rather than just throwing up barriers, Canada is rewiring its industrial backbone, fueling self-reliance, stability, and long-term economic sovereignty. Before we delve deeper, if you're finding this breakdown insightful, hit that subscribe button and join the Highway Herald community. Your support helps us keep delivering high-octane updates on vehicles, policy, and the road ahead. Now let's move from policy controls to financial firepower, because Canada's next play came with billions in backing. Fueling resilience, Canada's industrial overdrive. Enter BETCO, short for Big Enterprise Tariff Credit, Canada's high-octane response to escalating trade tensions. Backed by a 10 billion Canadian dollar facility through the Canada Development Bank, this initiative offers up to 50 million Canadian dollars per eligible manufacturer. But there's a catch. Companies must submit detailed reshoring strategies to qualify. It's more than just a bailout. It's a roadmap to rebuild supply chains within North America. One standout example is Montreal's new nickel-chromium alloy casting plant, funded by BETCO and purpose-built for aerospace-grade landing gear. Meanwhile, Ontario's green hydrogen pipeline shifted to using Canadian steel, reaching full output while creating over 1,000 union jobs. The Build Canada Fund has followed suit, requiring minimum domestic steel content in bids, affecting a hefty 24 billion Canadian dollars in planned infrastructure. On top of that, 1/3 of the expanded defense budget is now allocated to Canadian-made materials, fueling production at key facilities like the Halifax shipyards. This isn't patchwork policy, it's a long-game transformation. Canada's trade strategy is fusing short-term protection with long-term industrial reinvention, revving toward a more sovereign, resilient economy. And while Canada was shifting into high gear, other nations weren't idling either. Global responses began rolling in fast. Global shockwaves and diplomatic crossroads. Canada's tariff counteroffensive has triggered a broader global response, reshaping alliances across the automotive and materials landscape. As Canada activated its so-called steel firewall, major allies like the EU, Japan, and South Korea stepped off the sidelines and into action. Rather than retaliate with tariffs, Brussels is pursuing a resilience-based strategy, introducing subsidies for green steel, issuing sovereign bonds, and expanding joint EU defense production tools. Japan's METI is preparing to supply aluminum to offset shortfalls in Canada, while Germany's Steel Federation applauded Canada's swift response and urged the EU to step up its own efforts. This isn't just frustration with US protectionism. It's a coordinated realignment to secure and regionalize supply chains amid growing geopolitical uncertainty. In contrast, the US response has been combative. The White House and USTR labeled Canada's actions unnecessary, signaling a potential WTO complaint. Meanwhile, US auto and aerospace sectors warned that cutting off Canadian metals could paralyze production. This emerging conflict is about more than prices. It's a global fight over economic sovereignty and industrial control. As the diplomatic engines rev, markets are feeling the rumble. Let's head into the final countdown: tariff tensions and the road to reckoning. As the July 21st deadline nears, markets are growing increasingly volatile. Mid-June saw a spike in Cleveland's hot-rolled coil prices, signaling investor anxiety over the unresolved US-Canada tariff standoff. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem warned that continued tariff tensions could significantly drive inflation, estimating a 75% pass-through into consumer prices within 18 months, meaning costlier vehicles and goods across the board. In response, the Bank of Canada may deploy macro hedging tools and liquidity support if interest rates need adjustment. Meanwhile, the US Federal Reserve faces its own dilemma, balancing inflation risks against pressure to cut rates. Even the Bank of England has weighed in, calling this a new era of trade-driven inflation volatility. Domestically, Prime Minister Carney's wait-and-see approach has drawn criticism from opposition leaders pushing for faster action. Yet Ottawa maintains that alignment with allies like the EU and Japan is key. South of the border, business groups are requesting exemptions, while President Trump hints at limited carve-outs. This showdown isn't just economic. It's a critical moment for the future of North American trade. Final verdict: forging the steel firewall. As of June 25, 2025, Canada's steel firewall has evolved from a defensive reaction into a full-fledged industrial strategy. Through adaptive tariffs, reshoring incentives, domestic sourcing mandates, and traceability enforcement, Ottawa is reshaping its manufacturing foundation for long-term sovereignty and resilience. Whether this leads to compromise or confrontation remains to be seen, but steel and aluminum are no longer just materials. They've become tools of diplomacy, economic defense, and geopolitical leverage. For automakers, suppliers, and everyday consumers, July 21st marks more than a policy deadline. It's a pivotal crossroads for the future of North American trade. What do you think? Was Canada's steel firewall a smart strategic move or a risky bet? Should the US work with allies, or keep tightening its trade grip? How might this showdown impact your job, your business, or the price of your next vehicle? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Highway Herald for your next update on the road ahead. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's more exciting and informative content waiting for you.